Chapter 16. Poetic Hint. Nancy and her friends wondered if they had heard correctly. The name of the man they thought was Ben Banks was Dite. To make sure of this, the girls waited until the man had gone up in the elevator. Then they went to the desk. "Is Mr. Banks registered here?" Nancy asked, smiling at the clerk. "You mean the composer? Yes, but he uses his own name of Horace Dite. I'm sorry, but Mr. Dite can't see you now. He left word that he didn't want to be disturbed." The girls left the hotel. On the way back to River Heights, they discussed the new developments in the mystery. "Do you suppose Mr. Dite is related to Diane's family?" Bess asked. "This so-called Ben Banks may very well be a relative," Nancy agreed. "I'll make it my business to find out. If he is, what a tangle this mystery is becoming." In the light of the day's discovery, Mr. Drew's case took on new significance. Nancy was eager to get home and talk to her father. She had been in the house only 15 minutes before he came in. Nancy asked, "How are things going in the Dite case?" "Not good for him. Mr. Booker has just informed me that his chemist has analyzed the bottles of fluid you obtained from the Dite factory." "With what result, Dad?" "The solutions are the same as those used in the Booker plant to toughen the spider thread." "Then Lawrence Dite did steal the formula, or rather hired Bushy Trot to do it." "It appears that way. I've decided to prosecute Dite as soon as I can prepare my case." Nancy then told her father what she had learned about Ben Banks and the fact that the man's real name was Horace Dite. "Affairs are getting complicated," the lawyer mused. "I certainly need your advice," Nancy said. "Can you find out anything about Horace Dite?" "Let me check my files at the office to see if I have anything on him," Mr. Drew offered. A quick call to his secretary revealed that Lawrence Dite did indeed have a second cousin named Horace. "You're a really thorough investigator," Nancy remarked with a smile. "Well, you never know when some small detail about a man's background may prove very useful," Carson Drew replied. "In this case, all I have to go on is the fact that this cousin Horace is a loafer about the same age as Lawrence Dite." "Where do we go from here?" Nancy wondered. Ben Banks learned from Mr. Jenner that a certain Nancy Drew knows something about him and wants to know more. He may mention my name to the River Heights Dite family. "I never thought of that," exclaimed Mr. Drew. "Maybe I'd better hold up the proceedings against Lawrence Dite until you clear up the March case. And have you found any more of Phipp's songs?" Nancy shook her head. "I certainly hope you can," her father said. "Mr. Hawkins has purchased that song you brought me." "Wonderful!" Nancy exclaimed. "I received a letter from Hawkins this morning. He liked Phipp March's song very much, and he wants more like it." "If I only could supply some. So far I haven't been able to find another piece, Dad, but I believe I have a good clue this time." She told her father about hearing a tune on the radio, which Mr. March believed to be Phipp's, and which contained the phrase, "My heart's desire." "I recall reading those words in one of the letters Phipp March wrote to his wife," Nancy explained. "I believe the clue to the missing music, if there's any that hasn't been stolen, may be in those letters after all. Suppose I get them." "You'd better pack some clothes and slip away from here," her father advised. "If the Dite cousins suspect you're after them, I'd feel better if they don't know for sure where to find you." "I see what you mean," Nancy agreed and paused a moment. "The March mansion will serve that purpose. And there's so much at the house I want to investigate. I'll leave now and take the letters with me." "Good. I'll drive out there if I have anything to report before I hear from you." Nancy was sorry to leave her father so soon, but he wanted her to get back to Pleasant Hedges while it was still daylight. She had had so much to talk to him about that she had forgotten completely to tell him of the appearance of the strange intruder at the March home. Upon reaching the old mansion, Nancy immediately sought out Mr. March. She told him that her father's client had bought Phipp's song. "That's marvelous! Now my son and the March family will have recognition at last. Nancy, I can never repay you for what you've done." "Mr. Hawkins would like more songs." Nancy smiled. "I'm going to search harder than ever for them now. Here are your son's letters. Let's look through them for clues." For some time, the elderly man and his guest read without saying a word. Then suddenly Nancy cried out, "Here's what I was looking for! Listen to this!" Nancy read from one of Phipp March's letters to his wife. "No love more true than mine, I would protect thee every day. Among old things and fine, I put my heart's desire away." "It's a pretty verse," said Mr. March. "But as to its being a clue..." Nancy gave her interpretation of the words. "Your son wanted to provide for his wife always. He put the song with the words, 'My heart's desire,' among some fine old things. She was to find the music and sell it if the need arose." "I see. And you think he meant he hid it somewhere in our attic?" "Perhaps," Nancy replied. "Let's see if we can find another clue among these letters. I have a hunch the key to the mystery is right here." A very few minutes later, Nancy came across a lovely verse. "I believe I found it!" she exclaimed excitedly. She read it aloud. "Long forgotten man, my secret you hide. Reveal it to my love, that comfort may abide." "That means less to me than the other verse," declared Mr. March. "What do you make of it?" "Long forgotten man must be the skeleton. He guards a secret which, when found, will bring comfort to your son's family." "Maybe," the elderly man agreed. "But you've already found the secret drawer in the wardrobe. There was only one song in it." Despite this, Nancy was hopeful about the skeleton clue. She insisted upon going to the attic at once for a further investigation of the skeleton and the wardrobe. Mr. March followed her, carrying a lighted candle. "I can't stand many more disappointments," he said in a gloomy tone. "Each time I think something surely will come of the search, only failure has been the result. I haven't enough money to start suit against Ben Banks or Harry Hall." "I have a hunch that this time we're going to be successful," Nancy declared. As soon as they reached the attic, Nancy went to the old wardrobe and gingerly opened the door. This time she had a very different impression of the skeleton. It did not seem sinister to her. In fact, she could almost imagine it was trying to be friendly. "Maybe that's just because we've met so often," she thought with a smile. Or else it could hold a very vital clue to good fortune for Mr. March and Susan. Carefully, she removed the bony skeleton from the hook. Where its head had hung, a tiny hole could be seen on the back wall of the wardrobe. "Perhaps this means something," she said with increasing hope. A long, round curtain rod lay on the floor. She picked it up and carefully ran one end through the circular hole in the wardrobe. The rod touched no wall or object beyond. Puzzled, Nancy removed the rod and peered through the tiny hole. She could see nothing, not even a glimmer of light. "That's odd," she said to Mr. March, and stepped aside so he could take a look. What do you suppose?" the elderly man gasped. "I always assumed," Nancy said, "that this wardrobe stood against an outside wall of the attic." "I did myself," Mr. March added, still mystified. "There must be a room or niche beyond. Otherwise, we'd see daylight." "You're right, my dear." Mr. March shook his head. He laughed gently and added, "To think I've lived here all these years without discovering this. You've shown me now that I must not take anything for granted." Thrilled by her discovery, Nancy said she would run downstairs and out of doors to take a look at the architecture of the house. When she inspected the exterior of the mansion critically, she could see that a small section of the main house connected with the roof over the old servants' quarters. There must be a secret room up there, Nancy thought excitedly. End of chapter 16.